Sometimes, life confronts us with choices that can change the course of a moment or even a life. Today's story is about a girl named Faith who faced an impossible situation and had to choose between walking away or stepping in when the world needed her most. This is not just a story of courage, but of destiny, sacrifice, and the ripple effect of one act of kindness. Faith was a quiet, hard-working university student. Her final exams were over, and though she felt exhausted, a sense of triumph filled her heart. She had passed, and the future seemed bright. The long semester had finally ended, but little did she know, this day would test her more than any exam ever could. As Faith boarded the crowded bus that would take her home, the world outside seemed to blur, her thoughts filled with plans of rest and time with her family. She found a seat near the back, tucked her books beside her, and closed her eyes, letting the hum of the engine calm her. Suddenly, a sound, a sharp gasp, cut through the normal bus chatter. Faith opened her eyes and saw, at the front of the bus, a woman. She was hunched over, her face pale, beads of sweat forming on her forehead. The woman was clearly in pain. Faith could see the large swell of her stomach. She was very pregnant. The woman clutched her belly, her face twisted in agony, but the shocking thing was that no one on the bus moved. No one even asked if she was okay. People averted their eyes, too absorbed in their phones or pretending not to notice. They were afraid, Faith realized, scared of getting involved, afraid of responsibility. Faith's heart pounded. She knew she couldn't just sit there. With shaky legs, Faith stood up. She slowly entered the crowd, her eyes locked on the woman. As she approached, the woman moaned, "Please, help me." Faith knelt beside her and whispered, "It's okay. I'm here." The woman looked at her with fear in her eyes. "The baby, it's coming." Panic swept through Faith. She was just a student. What did she know about delivering a baby? The bus rumbled forward, oblivious to the drama unfolding inside. She looked up at the driver, shouting, "Stop the bus. She's in labor." The driver hesitated for a moment, then swerved to the side of the road. The bus came to a screeching halt. People murmured, uncomfortable with the situation, but still, no one offered help. Faith's mind raced. She knew the woman didn't have much time. "Stay with me," she said, gripping the woman's hand. She remembered her phone, fumbling to call for an ambulance. But the minutes dragged on like hours, and help was nowhere in sight. The woman's breathing grew faster, more labored. Faith could see the life draining from her face, and a deep dread began to creep over her. What if something goes wrong, she thought. Before we continue, what would you do if you were Faith? Would you have the courage to step in, or would fear to hold you back? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're finding this story as intense as I am, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with others. Your support helps us bring you stories that challenge and inspire. Now back to Faith's story. Just as Faith thought the worst was coming, the woman's eyes fluttered shut. "No, stay with me," Faith shouted, shaking her. The woman's grip on her hand loosened. "No, no, no," Faith cried. The sound of sirens wailed in the distance, but it was too late. The woman slumped against the seat. Her breathing slowed and her eyes dimmed. Faith stared, frozen in horror. The baby was coming, but the mother was slipping away. Time seemed to stop. Faith, filled with despair, felt an overwhelming sense of helplessness. The woman, barely conscious, whispered something so faint it was almost a breath. "Save my baby." The paramedics rushed in, pulling the woman onto a stretcher. They worked fast, but as the baby's cry echoed through the bus, a deep silence followed. Faith stood in shock, realizing the weight of what had just happened. The woman didn't survive, but the baby did. As the ambulance drove away, taking the newborn and the lifeless body of its mother, Faith felt an indescribable hollowness inside. She had been there, she had tried, but she couldn't save them both. She returned to her seat, tears blurring her vision. People stared at her, but no one said a word. They had watched and done nothing, and now a life was gone. The tragedy hung heavy in the air, but as the bus continued on, Faith realized something profound. The baby survived because she had acted. And that was the lesson, a harsh, cruel truth about life. We cannot save everyone, but we can always choose to act. It is in the trying that we find our humanity. The bus dropped Faith off at her stop, and as she walked home, her heart heavy, she knew that her life had changed forever. She had been tested in a way she never expected, and though the outcome was not what she wanted, she had chosen to help when others did not. Days later, Faith couldn't stop thinking about the baby. She felt a connection, as though her actions tied her fate to the newborns. She went to the hospital, hoping to learn more about the child. To her surprise, the baby had no family. No one had come for her. The social worker explained that the mother had been alone, a refugee with no known relatives. The baby was to be placed in foster care. Faith's heart raced. In that moment, she felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility. Could she walk away now after all she had done? Faith returned home, but she couldn't sleep. The thought of the baby alone in the world haunted her. A seed of doubt and longing grew inside her. She couldn't help but wonder, was this baby meant to be part of her life? After days of sleepless nights, Faith made a bold decision. She returned to the hospital and asked about adopting the baby. It was crazy, she knew. She was still a student, unsure of her future. But deep inside, she felt a calling, a purpose. The adoption process was long and difficult, filled with hurdles Faith never anticipated. But with every step, her resolve grew stronger. She had chosen that bus, and she wasn't going to turn back now. Months later, Faith walked out of the courthouse, the baby in her arms, officially her daughter. The journey had been hard, but looking into the child's eyes, she knew it was all worth it. As Faith walked down the street, cradling the baby, she reflected on how that one day, that one choice, had changed her entire life. Sometimes, it's not the plans we make, but the unexpected moments that shape our destiny. And in saving the baby, she had saved herself too. And that was Faith's story. A story of courage, compassion, and the painful reality that not every story ends with a happy ending. But every act of kindness leaves a mark. What would you have done in Faith's place? Sometimes the hardest choice is deciding to care. Remember to like, subscribe, and share this story with those who need to hear it. Because in the end, it's not the outcome that defines us, it's the choice to act, even when the odds are against us. Thanks for watching.